I did a video the other day and who the attitude adjuster is, and Kurt, who is Lord Muck, and Alex from West Coast Logging, spoke there for a little while with me on different things of it. It's been a long time that I've been watching different things happening to people around me and right around the world, where I was very driven with my work to get from one place to another place to get jobs done, to be highly productive and things like that. Because I work for myself, that means more money in the bank. As life moved on, and this is very important for people to look at within themselves and other things, my awareness with the horses and being able to communicate with the horses opened up a new place for me to be able to almost empathetically feel things that aren't a conscious thing, aren't really there unless you are able to feel. It's going back to what I'm saying, but so I started to get feelings with people, a lot of elderly people, a lot of people I was working for, some not so elderly, and I got a feeling within my guts that at certain times I either needed to stop and listen to that person. There was something that I was meant to take away from that meeting, and some of the things were very random. I mean, just honestly, unless you became aware, you would normally override that instinct. I became very aware, and something Kurt said last night was that a dear friend of his, Anna, had gotten sick, and we're talking major illnesses with people. I'd met some people like that, and that instinct had kicked in within me that I stopped and I listened. And some of the greatest things and greatest stories you could tell came from a half hour I should have been somewhere else, or an hour I stopped and took out of my day and went, you know what, it doesn't matter about anything else, I feel like this is important. And some of the things that I took away from that, you can never ever show someone else. I'm sorry, the sun's just come out and now I'm squinting. But some of the messages, some things I was meant to give to somebody, in that having the time to listen, I say it over and over again to people. Kindness, whether it is with horses or animals or people, is never wasted. It doesn't matter what form the kindness is. The kindness could be just taking the time to listen. Sometimes you need to shut up and you need to listen. Sometimes I myself are guilty of talking away and getting excited and then running away at the mouth and not listening to people, which I've learnt now is so very important. Sometimes that's all people are after. There are so many elderly people out there, mature people, who have such either incredible stories of their lives or things that they've been through and things like that, that some of the greatest things have been shared. You just can't put to words, and I would never have experienced those things had I not taken the time to listen to those people. And sometimes it's been very obvious to me that what the person had to say was actually something important that I needed to hear in my life. You've got to understand life works very mysteriously, but then actually it's not real mysterious. How many times did we walk past that person? How many times did we not interact? We chose not to interact because we were too frightened that if we say something we might offend somebody, or we might say we have an opinion. That's why I always say that attitude is absolutely important in every part of our lives. It's the motivation that gets us up to go and make a difference. my knees ache, my hips ache, my back aches. You know, I've been working so hard for so long. But you suck it up, you get up and you go to work. But you know, sometimes the spirit of the soul is what keeps us going. And you know, sharing with people, sometimes all that they wanted was just to talk to somebody. And we forget that at the end of the day, some people are very lonely. You know, saying that I'm here. I'm happy to chat to people. I'm happy to throw ideas around. I'm happy to talk. But we've got to take more responsibility for our health. And you know, governments aren't to be trusted. You know, governments are multi-gazillion-dollar industries that they're not interested in you and I. We're just a part of the machinery that keeps it going from the cradle to the grave. They draw a lot of their income from pharmaceutical companies, chemical companies, and if you look across the board at who owns what, you end up finding that the people putting chemicals in our food are the same people that are putting pharmaceuticals on the table. And you don't see anything wrong with that? You don't see any conflict of interest? And the government takes the money from those people? You know, it's not a case of going really hardcore cynical of those things, but why would we as a public be allowing our food to be altered? Okay, now fine, you're altering it for colour, you're altering it for taste, so-called, you're altering it for all these things, but then you start to see them taking the seeds out of the fruit, out of the produce, properly genetically engineering it so there's no seeds, there's no reproduction. The actual food can't reproduce. Now in nature, what would happen if something couldn't reproduce? It'd go extinct, it'd be gone. So then why, as a people, would we want our food not only tampered with, right, where they're altering colour and everything else? How many times have they gotten it wrong and things have killed people or otherwise, and we don't hear about that as much as that, but it goes wrong. Then why the heck would we be allowing them to take the seeds and take those things from the fruit and the food? You know, we could have global wars. We could have wars with America and you know, all the countries around the world. But think about this, okay? And I'm not advocating that. What I'm trying to say is the person who controls the food controls everything. Okay, now it might be a big stretch to think at this point of your lives, or this point, that companies are doing it. Companies owning the food and the food won't reproduce is a very scary concept. Not right now. In 10 years or 20 years, if it doesn't stop, or we don't take charge of it and learn how to grow our own seeds and things like that, which is common sense at this age, this stage of our development, but we're letting things be lost to us. Our children aren't learning how we actually grow produce and stuff like that, and we grow it without chemicals, okay, because we choose to. I honestly believe the chemicals that are put into our foods through those things are deadly to us. And the generational proof of how many memory issues and mind issues are in our older generation already, in one generation, it's terrifying me. I don't know about you guys, but I've seen enough of it. The cancers that are there, that are rampant, and they weren't like that before. The kids that have ADHD and all the other problems that we have now with family and children, and you look at it and go, well, hold on a minute. You know, when I was a kid, there weren't any ADHD kids. There were kids that were a little bit more naughty, but they weren't even that naughty. The things that we're seeing now, coming from food-related things, are scary at this point. But you've got those companies with chemicals and stuff like that that actually supply the seed, they actually supply the fertilizer, they actually supply the pesticides, and in that it's commonly known that in some of those mobs Once you plan out a field as a farmer, you have to use their products anymore because nothing else will grow in that ground. Only their seed, only with their fertilizer, only with their pesticides will you raise another crop on farmland. And we don't have enough farmland to start with. In the next 20 or 30 years, if we don't change the way we're doing things, a meteor or something like that's probably going to be a little less consequential than what's going to happen when people start starving, and starving in large numbers. And they're in countries that have large populations of weapons. You know, some of the poorer countries have a far bigger population of weapons than any of the westernized countries in the world. So we need to be aware of the future. We need to be planning to be able to feed our peoples. We need to be able to plant our own food, even if we start growing them on smaller plots in smaller lots, and we market them for more money because they are totally chemical free. You know, I have a anarchy method to growing, and that is that I just grow everything I can. I allow if the pests take a certain amount, if I've grown, you know, a large number of something and I lose a few to pests, I'd rather do that and not have the chemicals on it and be able to look people in the face, my neighbours and people, you know, going past and buying stuff, look them in the eye and go, there is nothing on there except what was in the ground properly. You know, the manures, the fertilisers, and I don't feed my horses chemicals. They just eat loosened chaff, and that's all they eat, or loosened hay in this case. So even from that point of view, there's not those things. And then I just use grass clippings and things like that. The seeds I use are then seeds I've taken from my produce that I have grown and then has spoiled. See, if you keep the cycle going, there never is really a waste. All of the water gets reharnessed back to the dams, and it gets reapplied to the ground, and then it goes back through the water table back to the dams, and the rain adds to that. Your seeds, I take my seeds from my plants because I now know that those particular plants that I'm growing are full of flavour. You've never tasted tomatoes like it in store-bought tomatoes. But the same way that now we produce solar energy in house lots, and it affects the grid. By the time you get enough places producing, it takes over that slack. We need to get back to a point where our farmers are being paid decent money for really good produce, and they can do it on a smaller scale. The system is what's wrong. We have a system where the farmers are raped with their produce. They're making nothing out of it, and everybody feels bad about it, but the farmer has to produce 50% more than what he did 20 years ago just to survive, and he's only just surviving because that's how the system works. The people with the money that are the middlemen, the grocery stores and the rest of it, are the ones that still make the large profit, but the farmer gets none of it. And he's only just got enough just to keep him there. Because they need him, but they don't want him to prosper. Because then he could actually go somewhere else and he could actually use somebody else to market his produce. So we need to, as consumers, start to demand higher quality. We need to start to demand better accountability. And this business of the barcodes and that, they know exactly what farm it came from and everything else, is still rubbish back to the wrong people are making the money. And the producer, the person who actually cares and is trying to feed his family and do a good job, needs to be the one that we support. If that means we need to come back to smaller farms, that we're paying better money, well, we're still paying the same price. But we're buying it from the middlemen instead of buying it from the person who actually produces it. Make it worth that person's effort to care more about the animals within the system. You know, most of them don't end up with, you know, things squeezed in cages or badly kept by choice. They're barely surviving, and the squeeze is on them non-stop. They're not actually the enemy. It's the middlemen and the end user that are forcing that. So it's time we started taking more responsibility for our part in it and demanding better produce, growing it ourselves much more. There's a lot of joy in putting food on a table that you actually grew. It just means that if I want some produce there, I've got to have planned 6 weeks or 3 months or whatever it is ahead. But you think about that. Whether it's 3 months or it's 5 years for, say, apples or something like that, the best time to start is right now. Plant the seeds. Seeds don't grow in packets, so put them in the ground. Take a chance. That's how I do it. If I get, X amount come up, that's all well and good. I'll even plant old seeds that I've had in packets for years because they're never going to grow in that packet. Why not put them in the ground and give them the chance? If I only get 10% out of those packets because they're very old, because I've had them sitting on the shelf forever, it's still worth in my soul to actually take the chance on putting them in there. And in exactly the same way, it's the same with your heart. It's no good keeping your heart in a box and keeping it all pent up because you're frightened that somebody might hurt you. If you don't use your heart, it's of no value. If you don't care about something, if you don't have an attitude about something, then there's nothing of value past that point. It is very important to be passionate about something. All the great things that were ever created, whether they're living things or otherwise, or relationships, were created through taking a risk. The greater majority of people are good people. They are people who care, who are passionate about things. Being frightened is not something I am. Being bullied or bothered is not somebody I am. I don't do that. When you work with 600 kilo horses that are very seriously bothered when they come to me, by the time they get to me, and you can reach them in the way that I can reach them without any violence, without any harm, you start to see a planet in a different way. The things that horses teach you is that horses live in the now. If I change their reality, so I change their life and I change their perspective,